Hello, everyone.
Good morning or afternoon.
I don't think we're recording yet. How's everyone fared it with this big snowstorm?
My driveway's looking okay at the moment.
That's saying something. That's great.
I'm attempted to go anywhere though.
It was a big one.
Plows didn't come till late last night on our road. I don't think our road's a big priority. Kind of tucked away.
I'm afraid to look at the forecast for the later part of the week.
Hmm. I saw a lot of snowflakes on some of those days.
It is a very busy day today in the LOB, so why don't we give, and elsewhere, why don't we give people a few more minutes?
Sure. Brian, it's going to be you or Kim doing the slide deck.
I have it prepped to share.
Wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like I have the ability to share already, so that should work out
Oh, perfect.
perfectly. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Everyone seems to be holding up. That's good. Okay.
Dig out and wait for the next storm, right? That's the
It looks like we have sort of a quorum here. Why don't we get going?
Yeah,
Thank
I
you for
agree.
joining, everyone. I'm going to leave it off to Ajit and Brian to take us through here our second deep dive for our subgroup, which is CT SEDS.
Great. Thank you, Representative. I know Brian also has a colleague of his on the call. So today it's a deep dive into the CT SEDS review. And I know Brian, we've worked on a deck. He's worked on a deck mostly with Kim to get something up. And Brian, you can get the deck up.
Is that coming through okay?
It is. It's great. Thank you. The next slide essentially reviews our charge as it pertains to this particular deep dive. Remember, there are three charges. The first one was outcomes, which we looked at in the first meeting. The second one is CT SEDS review, which we're doing today. And the third one is a peer review piece that we'll do at the next meeting on March 31st. But today it's the C4, section C4, which talks about that the commission shall review and recommend changes to CT SEDS, and that such review shall at a minimum consider accessibility and usability by different users, any requirements of CT SEDS that exceed statutory and regulatory requirements, and also to do this work in concert with another report that is imminently to be submitted, which was a look at every field in CT SEDS. I don't know, sneak peek, there are over 1,000 of these different little data elements that have been reviewed, and that report will be submitted shortly to the legislature as well. So that's essentially our charge. So what we thought we'd do today is actually walk through a little bit in terms of what is CT SEDS, how does it actually work, what does it do, but then also speak to how we have received feedback from different stakeholders, how we've incorporated some feedback, how we've had external entities actually review it and give us recommendations. So, you know, a lot to be discussed, but we're hoping that we can do the presentation in the first half of this meeting, and then maybe have the rest of the meeting devoted to discussion about this topic. So with that intro, I'm actually going to turn it over to Brian and Kim to walk us through the rest, and I'll chime in with some color commentary maybe here and there. But Brian,
Appreciate that. I think most of you know me. I'm Brian Klimkowitz. I'm the Special Education Division Director at the State Department. And Ajit mentioned Kim Bean, who is our project manager for CT SEDS. Kim, do you want to just say hello and talk a little bit about your background and your role?
Sure. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Ajit. My name is Kim Bean. I'm the project manager for CT SEDS. I work very closely with the Bureau of Special Education and the Performance Office within the State Department of Special Education. I started on July 1st of 2022, which was the first day of rollout of CT SEDS. So I have been on this journey alongside the districts and the Bureau since launch.
Thanks, Kim. Appreciate you being on. So as Ajit mentioned, we put together some high-level overview. I know some of you on this call are very familiar with the system and others may not be. So bear with us, and please take down any or make note of any questions that you might have. Stop me at any point in time if you have questions. But as Ajit mentioned, we do have a few slides here, and there'll absolutely be opportunity for questions at the end as well. So the first slide is just to talk about what the special education data system is. Although it's named CT SEDS and has that moniker of special education, the system is much more than that, as you'll see by the various modules that are put in place. But this is a transactional system, meaning that the folks that utilize this system at the local level to document and produce requirements related to special education, Section 504, and more. It's a web-based system, so it is online, and we've provided it to school districts at no cost. The driving kind of impetus for the system initially was around the IEP document, which was updated through a process that happened 6 years ago, where we received feedback from interest holders and worked to improve the former document that was in place for the IEP. One other important thing to note is that parents have access to something called a parent portal, and they're able in that portal to receive documents that are created in the system. The design of CT SEDS, that last bullet I will start with, is that it is a process-based system, not a form-based system. So there are form-based systems that exist where you're just plugging in information to a form. This system in particular is designed as a process, meaning, from what's the first action or activity that needs to take place, for example, in a special education referral, and works the user through the process and all the requirements along the way. And it was designed to improve and generate high quality IEPs and processes for our state. It was also to align systems and data reporting so that all of our districts are utilizing the same system. There are states that do not have a statewide system in place, and that poses significant challenges, not only in reporting, but also in fidelity of information that's reported to the federal government, and then also the documentation that's provided to parents. So we are and know that consistently across every district and every school and program that the systems are equitable. I mentioned the new IEP previously, so we'll move to the next slide. As mentioned previously, there are many different modules within the system as a one-stop, if you will. In addition to special education processes, there is Section 504 modules where our districts work to develop Section 504 plans for students, and also multi-tiered systems of support. So there are districts that are using this module to document general education interventions for students that require either academic or behavioral support prior to or while they're identified as needing special education. So that's a separate module. The data collection and alignment is a particular strength and an important component of the system. Our public student information system is aligned with CT SEDS, and there are feeds overnight that happen on a daily basis to ensure alignment, meaning if one student transfers from one district to the next, all of the information within that system is transferred to the new district, and those processes are aligned. All the way at the local level, we have worked with some of the vendors in which districts, for example, PowerSchool use for their local student information system. And we have in place alignment where if a student has an IEP plan or a Section 504 plan in CT SEDS, there's a feed that goes into their PowerSchool or whichever student information system they're using to indicate and to access those plans for general education teachers and so forth. That just assists with dissemination of information. There are state assessment accommodations built in and feeding to our TIDE system that we use for all of our state assessments, so that students, if they have accommodation requirements for state testing, that information is housed within CT SEDS and is pulled into the state assessment process so that students are receiving the accommodations that they need to access those reports. We talked a little bit about the parent portal earlier. Districts also have the ability for a document repository in the system, and we utilize the data within all these components to report to the federal government.
And Brian, if I might jump in on that slide, actually, just to sort of add to is that, CT SEDS collects data, is a transactional system like Brian mentioned, right? So when we say transactional system, what we mean is this is the system that people use to do their business about students receiving special education, creating IEPs, entering restraint seclusions, creating a gifted plan, or entering 504 information, etc. So it's like what they use every day. It's not a public reporting system, for example. It's not an analysis. It's got some analysis tools built in for the secure users, but it's not a full-fledged data warehousing and public reporting system. And on the right-hand side, where you see the data collections and alignment piece, I think it's also important to know that the state collects a ton of information about students. CT SEDS allows us to get a more in-depth look at some of the pieces that you see here. But student demographics, the courses that students take, whether they have disciplinary sanctions, what is their attendance on a monthly basis in a year, what are their test scores, expenditure information at a school or district level, including special education expenditures that we report on EdSite. A lot of those kinds of things are separate and collected differently and in other systems from CTSETS. CTSETS does what it does, and it's designed to do that. But so when we report publicly on EdSite, we're basically pulling all of those information pieces together in order to make report cards about schools or report cards about districts or accountability measures. I just want people to sort of know that the CTSET system essentially becomes another data source that needs to be analyzed, that needs to be integrated with other data sets in order to make sense of how our kids are doing. It gives you a lot of information to start with, but it's really more the system in which they manage their day-to-day work. That's really what it's an informational transactional system. I hope that's helpful. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Ajit. Just a slide here on the usage in the system. We had, upon rollout, the first couple of years been presenting to the the State Board of Education related to onboarding and how many users were trained and what was the usage as far as finalized IEPs and Section 504 plans in the system. So this graph here shows if you I know it might be a little bit smaller, but basically through the month of November, from the start of this school year, we have nearly 50,000 IEPs that are finalized in the system. So that's in alignment with previous years. The higher number there in 2023 is for a variety of factors that was a couple of years into the rollout. And then also this depends on when students have annual reviews. And so by the end of the year, you would imagine that there would be at least 94,000 IEPs that are finalized within the system, and as well the number of Section 504 plans for students. And so it's quite a bit of use where the requirements are in place for both the IEP and the Section 504 process. With regard to the MTSS that I mentioned earlier, those are optional modules that the districts may choose to utilize, and so that's been rolled out in more of a cohort fashion. Just a couple one slide here, a comparison of the parent portal. This is one of the areas that there is great confusion on. Despite the resources that we've developed, we have training videos on what the parent portal is for parents in both English and Spanish, and we also have user guides. But there's a unrealistic expectation about what the parent portal is, in that some folks think that the parent portal is the parent's way to access the system. And although that's true, they're accessing the system to receive documents from the school district that are generated as part of the process. They're not accessing the system the way an educator is to manage those processes, as Ajit mentioned earlier. It is secure and confidential. There are multi-factor authentication processes in place to ensure the parents are receiving the information about their child or young adult. And so, but the system is not a comprehensive record, educational record. That's something that we have to, that we're continuing to communicate to both parents and advocates and attorneys, that the district has a responsibility to maintain education records. This parent portal is a tool to disseminate those records through the system. But when asking for, a comprehensive record review, that's not what this system produces. So the one other important note here that I just wanted to mention is that the documents within the system that are generated in the system are translated in the top 10 languages in our state. So it's a great benefit to families to have, for example, an IEP that's translated or other required documents within the system.
Brian, Rep. Corpus has a question.
Great, thank you.
On this slide, thank you, Brian, and Ajit. We got a lot of feedback or some feedback from parents in the select committee that they thought this was going to be the place where they could get the complete record of their child's history. And then they expressed frustration if they came into a hearing or a due process and they didn't have all the documents and the school board had all the documents, et cetera. Where else besides CT SEDS can they get these documents? Do they request it I mean, they can save it as the time goes on, but can they request it from the school?
Yes, they can. Yeah, so that if so as mentioned, that's part of the expectation that we're trying to right size, if you will, that this is not a comprehensive student record, portal. That
And
the
I can
district,
just jump in and just give an example of kind
Yeah,
of what
thanks,
would
Kim.
be in the portal versus what would not be in the portal, just to kind of clarify. So a consent form that is generated through the system, so a parent consent for evaluation. So the parent has to provide that consent. That's created through the system and it is sent to the portal for review and signature for the parent. Then the team conducts those assessments and develops a report on the student. That report that they've developed, that they have presented at the PPT meeting, is not going to go directly to the portal. So that would be something that the district could upload into CT SEDS in the student record, but it wouldn't automatically be visible to the parent. So, but as we all know that the team has to provide those evaluations to the parent, they would just use alternative ways to do that. So I hope that clarifies a little bit. And we're trying to do, we've taken in a lot of feedback, and I understand that concern from the parents, and we've worked with with CPAC on redesigning our parent guide, and we're sharing that actually later today with the field, that they can then share with parents, and exactly understanding what the parent portal will show versus what it won't.
So the stuff
and
that is,
back to your question, if the parent requests records for the student, the district has to produce those records. Some of them may be electronic, some of them may be hard copy. That's really where the district would be, sharing that information with the parent. They wouldn't access the parent portal for a comprehensive student record.
right? Is the district obligated to produce that, like in discovery leading up to a due process hearing?
They're required to produce those records at no cost to the parent for the first request. If there are multiple requests, then the parent there may be a fee associated with that request. But whether or not the parent is in due process or not, a parent can request records from the district. And I know Amy is on, so Amy, I don't know if you want to speak kind of to some of the processes that are in place for school districts and directors.
Of course. So when any mediation or due process request is submitted, parents are typically asking for the records, and those are all supplied. And the other thing to remember is CT SEDS is only a couple of years old. I know it's older than I'm thinking right now. Time flies. But many of these student records are going back 15, 16 years, right? So we want to ensure that we have a full record that we provide them. So it's very easy to get records from districts.
Okay. Thank you. And then it says on here, districts can choose not to utilize. What would you say is the adoption rate for CT SEDS across our districts?
Yeah, so this is the option for the parent portal. So
At the
at the
parent portal.
local level, they can turn off the parent portal, which means that the document, Kim mentioned earlier that there are a number of documents that are automatically pushed into the parent portal. that's a resource and a tool for teams. It's a convenience. So if I as a parent am in a remote meeting and I need to sign consent for an evaluation, that document can be automatically generated through and sent to the parent portal for an electronic signature. If the district chooses to send that, for example, evaluation consent by email, mail, or other means, they can do that. We as the state are not requiring them to use the parent portal feature. But Kim, I'm not sure if we know the percentage of districts who have adopted the parent portal or
I
not.
don't know. I know at the
Yeah.
beginning, I mean, anecdotally at the beginning, there were some districts that chose not to use the portal, but I have not heard that of most recent. So
Majority,
have
basically
to-
a majority use it, but there
Yeah.
may be, we can get those data to you.
I would imagine it's going to be a very low percentage that aren't using it, especially
Okay.
because of the translation feature. It's so good for schools to be able to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Tom has a question.
Great.
Thanks, Rep. Corvus. And thanks, guys, for this. This is great. Just a couple questions. You mentioned, Brian, the connection to potential option, I think, for districts to connect it to PowerSchool and kind of
Yes.
feedback sort of thing back, which is interesting. I never heard that actually. But is it something that's being used? I haven't experienced that myself, or I would imagine that's different because it's a parent portal. But when you go into like PowerSchool, for instance, that's accessible by students and parents both, right? So I'm just curious about like that. Like, do parents opt in to that crossover? Like, and I know maybe you guys aren't involved in it and it's more on the district level, but I'm just curious about that because it just brings to mind some potential issues, right? Because like a parent logging in and seeing all the documents around IEPs and such is different than them being on PowerSchool where students might have access, you know?
I'll just
No.
jump in here to clarify the
Yeah,
sync that we have to PowerSchool is strictly for the teachers to access the IEP for or the 504 for
Okay.
accommodation and goals and objectives purposes. It's not for, I'm going to check the grades and the status of, how we log in that for our
Well, yeah,
own
I mean, I
kids
think from the
and
parent,
such, yeah.
from the parent and student side, that's what it's used for, like on the daily,
Right.
on the hour, actually. You know what I mean? They use it like nonstop.
Oh yeah, yes, completely. So it's just
okay.
it really is just if an IEP is finalized today, within I think it's 48 hours, there is a shortened version of the IEP called IEP at a glance
Gotcha.
that is posted into PowerSchool.
PowerSchool, so teachers can access it there kind of more
Exactly.
easily than going into CT SEDS because they're in there
Exactly.
nonstop. Like,
right. So
okay.
that gen ed teachers aren't utilizing CT sets like our other
Sure.
special education
Oh,
staff.
right. So
but
this would
they're
allow
very-
that access
They
to.
can
Oh,
access
okay.
it. They
Okay.
can, but districts may not have set up their general ed teachers for access and or training
Yeah.
for the
Okay.
system. So they know PowerSchool. They can go into PowerSchool and see their rosters within there and see their students. Like I said,
Okay.
the IEP at a glance or the 504
Awesome.
for the students just in their classroom.
Yeah, awesome. That's helpful. And then a sort of a related question, and I'm sorry, Rep. Corpus got me thinking about things with all your questions. So this is thinking about, as Ajit, you were mentioning, like what this is used for as far as data collection for the student, right? At the student level, not broad-based. But I remember conversations around, even on the select committee, around how are we tracking progress for students, right? Around goals and objectives. And I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but like system does not allow for that. Like that's recorded. There's a document, often the progress report, that will be uploaded into CT SEDS for a student because I see those for my student, but you can't necessarily like track that, and you certainly wouldn't be able to track it necessarily more broadly, I don't think, as far as progress on things. So I just want to make sure I have that clear, and that makes, I don't know if I was clear in my question, but.
I think you may be saying that the goals and objectives for individual students are highly personalized and individualized, and that there is not a simple way to just roll that up into some kind of aggregate measure. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think that is
Because
my
we track
understanding of that
those.
is fair.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I'd
That's
let
the way I
Brian weigh
understand
in
it to
too.
work. I just remember I'm bringing it up because I remember it coming up in select committee as well. Rep Corp, like they were talking about how do we track and progress and all this kind of stuff, and how do we measure whether schools and districts and whatever are doing good, whatever progress we're making. But